What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the CrazyFaceUno Podcast. I'm your host, Shane McNeely. Just a reminder, CrazyFaceUno is inspiring others to do good and make a difference in our local and global community. And it's my honor and my privilege to introduce my guest today, my friend, Brady Peters. What's going on, Brady?
Hey, man. Not too much.
Thank you once again. I already said that to you a couple times now, but I'm going to keep saying it because I appreciate you coming on the podcast. So thank you.
Oh, gosh. My pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Yeah. So, there's a pretty good theme here with most of my guests so far. Not all of them, but there's a good chunk of my guests that I've all met you guys at this one specific location. And if you're listening and you've listened to many of the podcasts, you've heard this before. I met you at Invisible Children.
Yeah.
Ta-da. And I think it's so cool, though. I'm unashamed that my guests are all from Invisible Children because everybody there is just so amazing and off doing cool things and just really, really good-hearted people. And you are no different. So
yeah, well, it's a pretty extraordinary place to have worked, and I think the task to which the call to which we responded was one that attracted a lot of people that are better than me, and I wanted to be a part of that group.
Yeah,
sure.
Well, so. I don't know that they were better than you, but I think we're all in that group together. We all deserve to be there, and that was our place. So we all are equal in our deserve, whether we deserve to be there or not, I guess. So we're all equal there.
Yeah, well, I think about that sometimes, like the kind of people that place attracts. And, I think about like how it was kind of aspirational for me to want to apply to something like that.
Yeah,
I felt like even when I was going through the internship application.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That I'm applying to this thing because I've seen this group from afar, and I don't know if I would fit in there, but I want to be the kind of person who would fit in at a place like that. And so when I was accepted, I was like, oh, maybe I have some kind of thing to offer. It was not just affirming of my technical skills and my ability to complete an internship. It felt affirming of like, hey, this life that you get to choose to lead, it's worth taking those risks and putting yourself out there. Yeah,
absolutely. That's interesting. That's your perspective, I guess. I've a theme or just something that's came up a lot, and some of it's my own self, is just perspective in general. And so I don't know. I think we all have these perspectives. Sorry, there's an echo, Brady.
Oh.
Big time. And a weird squeaking noise. It's on your end, yeah. I just wanted to maybe see if we could figure that out. Did you put it on speakerphone? Is that what it is?
I put it on my headphones.
Oh, is it the little the headphones with the little thing, the microphone?
No, it's Bluetooth.
Interesting. It's a super big echo and a squeaking noise coming through. But anyway, I'll keep talking, and if you figure it out, then that's cool. But yeah, I'll just keep talking while you figure it out. But
can you still hear the
It's echo? Better now. Yeah.
Okay, let me try one more time with my headphones, and if it screws up again,
cool.
We can.
Yeah, I can hear it right now. Yeah.
It's going now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna put it on speaker.
Okay.
That's what I had it before.
Cool.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry, there's I kept cutting in and out of my own thought because I keep hearing myself in this weird squeak. I couldn't figure it out if it was me or if it was you. Oh, there it is again. Interesting. Okay.
I just turned off my Bluetooth, so it should
be
perfect. Better now.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. I just wanted to
No.
See if that was...
You're good. Should I start anything over?
No, we're good. We'll just keep going. I'm just recording. Everybody just gets that. That's real life, you know? And okay. I don't know. I just think that, you know, in a perfect world, we could just start over and do it. But like, I don't know. Life is full of like good things and like things that we wish were different, and that's okay.
Yeah. When did it start? I can say something again. Like,
oh no, you're good. Like, it was fine. It was just distracting for me. It's all good. No worries.
Okay.
I was just talking about perspective. So
yeah,
I don't know. Like, I have my own perspective. You know, like I've been really challenged with my own perspective of the podcast, of how I sound, how, you know, everybody like hates the way they sound when they first listen to it, and I'm getting really used to that, and it's just something you just get used to over time, you know. But then also, we've all got this like inner dialogue that we don't realize is as strong as it is. And like, you filter things through, at least I do. Like, I filter things out, you know, like verbally. And then I think that I've said things one way, but sometimes it's like, oh, I wasn't clear at all with what I said, and I thought it was really clear. So I've had podcasts that I've listened to where I was like, oh, I thought that was going to be way better than it was. And then I've had some where I was like, I thought that was going to be terrible, and it was actually fine. And it was all just this like inner dialogue and like conversation I had, or, you know, whatever. But perspective's everything. And so I don't know. I think of you, and I think of like, you belong there. Like, you belong there just as much as anybody else. So
thanks, man. Yeah, it's hard when you're listening to your inner dialogue all day and not listening to what other people are saying.
Yeah.
I think, man, creating anything and putting it into the world is super vulnerable.
Oof.
Like, a super vulnerable thing to do, especially something like a podcast or like a YouTube channel or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's you. Like, it's just you.
It's so true. Yeah. And you don't realize it until you kind of get into it, though. That's the thing. Like, I didn't realize. I mean, I'm a pretty vulnerable guy, you know? Like,
Yeah.
But, like, I just don't think I realized how, like, But I'm happy, like, that I'm doing it. So.
Right. Did you tell people you were going to do the podcast? Like, did you tell a lot of people you were going to do it before you started it? Or did you just kind of start doing it?
I just, like, started doing it and posted it and was like, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no lead up. It was pretty, it was always supposed to be this, like, side part, like, the side project of CrazyFaceUno. Like, I wanted CrazyFaceUno to be, or I, like, started CrazyFaceUno with this other idea, like, with it in mind, but, like, also knowing that I wanted to keep things kind of open to where that was going to go.
Yeah.
And, like, let that kind of shape the message and shape where it went. And it's led me to where I am today and the way things are, which is, I'm more than grateful for where things are at and where things are headed. I think there's some fun times ahead. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a, you know, we didn't even talk about what you did at Invisible Children, but, you know, I was writing things down like I do off Facebook and whatever, and you've really stuck to, like, kind of what you've been interested since college, which is like communications and PR. But like, communications has really been like a big theme in your life. So you saying that you understand, like, being vulnerable with putting your stuff out there, like, you know firsthand with writing and you know, with what your jobs and your positions you've held. Yeah,
man. I've sort of sorry, can you hear my dog running around in the background?
I didn't know. He's totally fine.
Okay.
You're good.
I've sort of, like, been on this arc, this character arc, if you will, to use a story reference.
Sure.
Of, like, in college, we had like a Invisible Children club on our campus. Just a small school in Western Kansas. It was very affordable. Just a couple hours from home. So, and it's where my brother went. I felt like it was just the place that I wanted to go at the time. And so after getting involved with this club on campus and a college ministry that was very justice oriented, I was kind of set at like by my senior year that like I really want to do work for justice-minded nonprofits.
Yeah.
And my gifts that I thought that I had were in writing and communicating.
Yeah.
And so after college, it was like, okay, well, what nonprofits am I going to intern at? Like, where am I going to get my foot in the door?
Yeah.
And so, like, I went to work for a little nonprofit in Colorado right after college. It was called Light Gives Heat. It worked in Uganda with women.
I think we've talked about this before, but like Light Gives Heat, I was really interested in them when I was in college as well. And like kind of like the front end of Twitter, and kind of like got in like introduced to them and kind of like corresponded back and forth through Twitter. And actually, I had like I don't know, like we were kind of in communication back and forth, and then I ended up going Invisible Children direction instead. But it was kind of, I remember you mentioning this before when you stayed at my house in St. Paul, and we had a conversation. I just forgot about that too until you mentioned that. But
well, I remember Jamie Landsberg, who I think you just had on the podcast. She had some interaction with them too. But it was like super like bootstrappy, like kind of a really small, really fun environment, and it was like a way for me to really learn on the job what writing for a website is like, and writing for social media, and writing for like product packaging, and how do you talk about a nonprofit. And there are things there that I did there that like I would look at now and be like, oh man, I'm not sure how much I was actually serving them in that, but they gave me a shot. They gave me a seat at the table, and it was really exciting to be there.
But I think all of those things like that shaped the direction you were able to take, and so
for sure
they have places in your life for sure.
And I got my degree in public relations, and when I was working at Light Gives Heat, I was like, hey, actually, I don't like PR, but I do like this marketing stuff that we're doing. And what's it called when you write for a website or write for a company? It's called a copywriter. I'd never heard of a copywriter before, and I was like, maybe I just want to be a copywriter at a big nonprofit. And not even a big nonprofit, but like to be a staff member at a nonprofit as a copywriter. So, man, I spent like a year and a half at Light Gives Heat, and it was an unpaid thing, and I was working at Starbucks from 5 to noon, and then Light Gives Heat from noon to 5, and really just kind of getting my feet wet, and just doing a lot of stuff. And when I got the call from Invisible Children that they needed, so I joined in 2012 midway through the spring campaign because a guy named John left the road. Someone left the movement team, the office team. So I went out and filled their position, and then a guy named John left the road, and I joined the roadies.
Like early on, right?
So my first day in the office was March 6th, 2012, which is the day the world exploded for Invisible Children. The beginning of the end, if you will. It was definitely like a moment of like, oh my God, like what have I done, and B, was this actually the right decision to come out here? Like, if this thing blows up and I need to go home, like, what am I going to do? And it was also a time of like, I met some people who were different from me in college, but really like a lot of the people I was around were white kids from small towns in the middle of the country.
Sure.
Who all really believed and acted the way I did. And so coming to Invisible Children and meeting people of such high moral caliber who believed different things than me, but who were leading a life that I really admired, I was like,
challenged in a new way that you've never been challenged before.
Yeah. And in a beautiful, like,
in a beautiful way.
Really
yeah.
Beautiful way to be challenged by, like, some of this dogmatic belief that I carried with me of my own Christian faith. And,
how did you just say that, of high moral caliber? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I really like that, like, imagery and that verbiage. So, I mean, that's your job.
Feel free to take it.
That's awesome. No, I just really like that. Like, that, I think that's, like, spot on. Like, I've never thought of the group, you know, when you try to describe, like, I don't know. I've always struggled to describe the people from Invisible Children, and I think that just, like, nailed it. Like, such high moral caliber.
Yeah, and it's the crazy thing. And the exciting thing and frustrating thing as someone who has a lot of inner voices that says I'm lame or I don't belong, is that the caliber of these people was not just morally high. It was like, they're morally amazing. They're incredibly smart.
Yeah.
They're all, like, models. They're all beautiful people. And they're just, like, they're so fun. Like, it was just so fun.
Work hard, play hard.
Them.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I get to, like, walk around with these angels all day.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, like, I was coming out of a environment in college and a little bit after college where I was pretty like, rooted in a belief system that didn't have room for people who thought or believed differently than I did. And not that it didn't have room, but didn't have room for their beliefs to be influential on my life.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's the first time I was really challenged with the idea of this person believes something different than me, and I love them very much. And I know that the right thing to do for me at that point in time is to share the gospel with them and, like, try to convert them to become a Christian.
Yeah.
And actually having conversations with people, just, like, this kind of stuff came up a lot. And for people who are listening who don't know Invisible Children, like, conversations about faith and the meaning of life were everyday normal conversations.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, Brady, I'm gonna, like, go out and, like, try to, like, sneakily convert people. It was just like, hey, what do you believe? And let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And that wasn't, like, an offensive question for most people. For
right.
some people it might have been. But really meeting people who were like, no, I understand what you believe, and I used to believe it, and I don't anymore. And I'm fine.
Yeah. And some of it was the opposite direction though, too, you know?
For sure.
So, like, I feel like I came in, you know, if I insert my part of, like, my experience from this was, I came in, like, similar, but I had been questioning things for a long time. And so finally I found, you know, my group of college friends were always welcoming to have those conversations. So I was no stranger to those conversations, but I was still searching and still trying to figure out what that meant. And so I hadn't fully let go of anything, but I didn't fully subscribe to everything either. And I was just in this, like, limbo space. So it was, like, extra, like, great for me because these conversations, like you said, happened every day. And it really allowed me this environment and this space to kind of, like, figure out, you know? And you'd get the groups that'd be like, hey, I'm going to church today. And, you know, you want to come? And be like, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, like, let's go. I'll go, you know? And then maybe you went a couple times and I was like, you know what? I don't want to go, and then I'll go the next time. And whatever it was, but you had this, I don't know, like it was such a welcoming, a safe place. It was just safe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I don't know how I would have experienced it outside of that community if it weren't such a safe place, but there were definitely parts of me that really started asking questions about God and about the nature of God and the nature of me and my friends who I was making and just falling in love with this community. And so after the spring, it was a hard spring, just being on the road in that
environment, tumultuous time in general. Yeah,
and they were the best of like audiences and the worst of audiences. We had a group of people. If you remember the Occupy Wall Street movement, we were speaking in Denver at a university, and they came to the screening with like bandanas over their face and sunglasses on inside. And as soon as Grace, the Ugandan woman who was with us, stood up, they like started screaming at her and like telling her that she was a liar and that we had brainwashed her. And it was so like
gross,
disgusting. Super disgusting. And I was just like, oh, I didn't know people could behave this way. Like really, like I knew people could behave that way. I'd seen it, like our work like was talking about people killing people and murdering people, but
for your own people to turn on people, like on you.
And also like I had a teammate named Dan who was very invested in the Occupy movement and was very like interested in what they had to say, like politically. And for this group that he resonated so quickly with to show up and tell him that he was a fake and a phony was just like an earthquake, for the foundations of. And so it, I don't know what you took away from that season, but that coupled with these conversations about faith and humanity really kind of started making me ask questions about who I was and what I believed, and led me to a place of sincere like wandering in the dark, like walking through. I had my first anxiety attack at Invisible Children, and Bethany Bilesma drove me to the airport so I could go home. And when I came back, like the community was so supportive of me. I was still dealing with things. I had a couple more anxiety attacks, and I went through this period of like wondering, like, am I like? I was not in a good place. I was not in a good place, but I was just like wondering, like, am I lovable? Like, am I someone who has value? And because, like, and does God love me? Is it possible for me to really like believe in God and to love God if God is this kind of judgmental man in a chair in heaven who's like, especially for the thing that really messed me up is like these friends who I loved so much who used to be Christians and decided not to be Christians anymore. It was like, oh, that means God used to love them and now is like just letting them burn in hell or something like that. Like that was.
But then watching them be so loving and caring and giving and
right. And helping me with my questions.
Isn't that beautiful?
it was amazing. And so I saw a therapist in my hometown. His name's Walt, and he was 84 years old. He was this like amazing man who didn't practice anymore, but was a friend of my mom's. And she was like, "You should go see Walt."
Yeah.
And he was just like letting me see for myself that that God was much more kind and loving and like good than I had ever imagined him to be, or for God to be. And that my fears of being unlovable were completely unfounded, and that there's nothing I could do to like get God to not love me, and there's nothing my friends could do either.
Yeah.
And that they were okay, and that God's love was for them as well. And so there's this like quote in scripture of Jesus saying like, sorry, I know this isn't a Christian podcast.
No,
I'm not trying to make it a Christian podcast.
No, you're totally fine. And honestly, like I want you to finish this, and then I've got a whole host of thoughts and my own things. But go ahead and say what you're going to say. You're fine. You're totally fine. Don't worry.
Jesus says like there's old wineskins and new wineskins, and I never understood what that was. He was like, you can't put new wine into old wineskins because those wineskins will burst and they won't be able to hold it. You have to put new wine in new wineskins. Yeah. And I was like, A, what is a wineskin? And like, what are you talking about? And B, like, why are you saying that? Yeah. And it wasn't until after I went through like a year of this. So after IC was fall of 2012, I was unemployed for a year, living at home on a farm with my dad and my mom, and like looking for jobs. I think I applied to like over 100 jobs and got 3 interviews. Like it was a tough year. Yeah. And but there was this process that I had to go through during that year of wandering in this quote unquote desert and just letting my foundations crack open and reveal like this actual foundation of what I believed. There was a lot of things that I had dressed it up with and put on top of it that were actually harmful and that were actually making me feel this way. And really just like getting down to this idea, this core belief of what my faith can rest on. And that's like, do I believe God exists? I do. Do I believe Jesus is who he says he is? Yes, I do. And do I believe that God is good? And I do. Yeah. And I believe God's love is for everyone, and that it's not up to me. Like I'm open to having conversations with people about faith, and I think that everyone has this, I don't know, the love of God is like on their side. It's for them, and it's sure. It's there for them if they want it. And I don't know. I used to be so interested in controlling where God's love was supposed to go.
But that's how I feel like. So I guess I'm going to jump in here. So
yes, please.
Man, a whole host of different things. I think you know, but like I grew up a pastor's kid. Growing up until 6th grade, basically, and my dad got out of the ministry, and that never really affected, my faith or anything in that way. Like at that time, I went to Bethel College, now Bethel University. I studied youth ministry, so I was my education is to be a youth pastor. And
you're in the system.
Yeah. And to fast forward to to today, and I've said this on the podcast, this isn't new, and this is, I think we've had conversations potentially about this as well, but I don't call myself a Christian. And
Okay.
so all of that laid out there, okay, first.
Yeah.
And we'll pull back around to it, but I want to touch on just, I guess, Kony 2012 and Invisible Children in that time. And man, that is like a knife in my chest to hear, your thoughts and your experience, and like to hear how people treated you and how people treated us, and Invisible Children. And if I'm completely honest, I don't think that I've fully dealt with that. It still rears its naked head at me, periodically. And, I really, really, really have a problem when people dismiss other people's opinions and thoughts, without actually like addressing it, when they just like put a meme up to discredit who they are based on like a joke. I think that that's cheap. I think that that is cowardly. And I don't believe in that. I've had friends do it to me. I've actually had someone do it to me recently, and man, it really, 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 it really affected me. And I think that was one of the, it's been something that's really like, it's been something I've starting to realize that I've always known that I really haven't dealt with it. I have in some ways, and I haven't really fully dealt with it. But for me, it's our group of people, this group of people that you've described so brilliantly and so well, and from top down, right? Like leadership, with Ben Kesey and the integrity and just the amazing leadership that he provided for our organization, for us as, young, malleable people, to just us as, individuals, roadies, people that were on stipends or worked in the office, whoever it was, it doesn't matter. But we were there, like you had said, with such good intentions, such big hearts, such differing backgrounds. We coexisted together. We were safe with one another. We believed wholeheartedly in what we did, and everything that we did every single day directly impacted the people that we were trying to help and to pull out of some of the most terrible situations. And so for people to, lack of better words, completely shit on us, and call us liars, call us names, drag Jason's name through the mud, and that still happens, it felt like being stabbed in the back. And for everything that you stood for was now hated.
Yeah.
And everything that Invisible Children stood for, beyond just our mission of helping people get out of the LRA and end the reign of the LRA in general, like even outside of that, everything we stood for as a company of loving and being peaceful was like then being challenged in a way that is so hard to describe. From like spiritually, like you've mentioned, physically in some ways, to vandalism, to just hate in general. And I've got some scars from that, and I don't know that I've fully healed from all of that. Like I'm still very bitter, I think. And I resent all of those people, and I resent what that stands for. I still do. And if I can be completely honest, I think I've harnessed a lot of that into what this is. I very much, from that day forward, I've seen social media too, but mainstream media, in a completely different light. And, I do not like mainstream media. It is an evil thing, I believe. And it's important, but what it's turned into is a problem. And that's just my personal opinions. And I don't like the hate. I don't like the negativity. I don't like the grossness that comes from that. And so CrazyFaceUno exists to, like I said, inspire others to do good and make a difference in our local and global community. And through positive storytelling, through redemption, through love, through and honestly it's storytelling. I've really funneled this down to CrazyFaceUno is a storytelling brand. I believe that everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. And so now to circle back to faith and religion, I love it. I think faith and religion, I think it has a place in this world. I think it's important. I don't look at you very much of like how you described Invisible Children and the people there of the safe place of this conversation. And I want that, like just because I don't believe what you believe, Brady, doesn't mean that you're wrong. And it doesn't mean that I'm wrong. Though that is like very much fundamental in some of the Christian churches, or like the Christian Protestant Christian faith in some ways, kind of like you described, but you've also now seen that differently, and it's like found what it means to you, and found, I don't know how to necessarily eloquently put what you just said, but I think people will understand, and I think you understand what I'm saying.
I do. Yeah.
I doesn't mean that I don't want to support Christian organizations, which at one point in time I felt like those were mutually exclusive. If I didn't believe the same things, then I shouldn't be a part of that. And I don't believe that anymore. And I think that, there are truths that live in whatever world that is. And if that's love, like you believe that God is love. I too believe that, if that's what you believe, like I believe in love. So like, what's wrong with that? Who cares what the heart behind it is necessarily? Love is love, and love is important.
Yeah.
Now I understand that like you have a different take on that, but that's my take on that. Sure. And that's, I guess for me, this is an inclusive idea, and I believe in higher power. I believe in God. I think when I say the word God, it comes with a lot of baggage, and there's a lot of people that have a lot of words that they want to hold on to for what God means and what God is. And depending on who you talk to, that is a whole different thing. I have friends that believe very much in what I'm just saying right here, and that don't call themselves a Christian, but when asked if they're a Christian, they go, "What do you mean?" Yeah. And because it means different things when people ask that question. And there's these baggage that just kind of comes along with all these different things and these questions. And I think that speaks more to the Christian faith than it does to a lot of things. And I think that there's some unhealthy things that come along with that, but not all of them are equal. There's different groups of people that believe different things and have really solid foundation and really solid meaning and really solid hearts and really solid just in what they believe. And I love that, we got to reconnect where you work now and that event that about a year ago now.
Yeah. Almost exactly a year ago.
Yeah. And it really, really was powerful for me because my beliefs haven't changed since then, but I came into this where I wanted to be very respectful. I want to be very true to who I am, and I'm not going to pretend to be a Christian. I'm not going to pretend to, believe the same things that everybody there did. But I wanted to be very respectful, and I loved every second of getting to serve that group of people in your company. I loved every single second of it. It was beautiful.
Thanks, man.
And I believe wholeheartedly in the mission of International Justice Mission. I believe in that. And I have friends that are doing things now, and Border Perspective. I'm going to keep talking about it. There's a friend of mine from college named Jonathan Moya. He has created an organization. It's a Christian organization called border perspective. And the whole idea is that he was an immigrant himself, came here when he was young from Mexico. His whole family came here and immigrated here at a young age. And he is grew up as a conservative Christian. And nowadays, the rhetoric behind what it means to be a conservative Christian is very much against who he is and and a part of who he is and what he is subscribed to all his life. And so he started asking questions and started trying to figure out what this perspective was on the border and going to towns. Him and his brother went across the whole length of the border of where the wall is and just went into these towns and asked people questions. And like many things, he left with more questions than he had going in. And the beginning of this organization. And so he's partnering with different people to bring leaders from the Christian church and bring people from the Christian, religion, this faith, the Christian faith, in to give them a different perspective on this situation, on what it means to be an immigrant, a migrant, an asylum seeker. And I think it's beautiful and it's important. And again, Christianity isn't going anywhere. And so why not elevate the people that's important to and that needs to hear that and to share the love that is important, I don't know. I say all this because like you can share your story. This is your story. It's not my story, right? And you can share as much as you want about your faith and what you believe. I'm very okay with that. And I think it has a place, and I don't feel uncomfortable about it. No, this isn't a Christian podcast or Christian business company, whatever. Yeah. But that's okay. I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. It's your story, and your story matters. Man. So.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I appreciate what you're saying. I think it's important to be able to articulate what you believe, no matter what you believe. I think it's important to be able to articulate it. And I'm glad that you have that, like you've been thoughtful about where you stand with your beliefs. I think that's super important.
Let me ask you this, though. I don't necessarily disagree with you. I just don't know. I don't know if I believe that statement fully. I just don't know. I haven't really processed it.
Sure.
But why do you think it's important for people to know what they believe?
Well, I think the statement behind the statement is,
sure,
I think it's important to be thoughtful.
Yeah.
About what you believe.
Okay.
And I think for a long time, I had been inheriting faith.
See, me too.
And not really considering like doing a lot of the work of, working out what I believe. And at a certain point in mostly everyone's life, like, you hear a lot from the pulpit, and I'm speaking mainly about Christians today, but you hear a lot from the pulpit about this is what people like us believe.
Yeah.
And you stay in that environment and you don't really question it, you just go along with it. And it's not that you're not an independent thinker, it's that you don't really feel like thinking independently about that.
Or that it's safe to do so.
Yeah.
I never felt safe to do so. And until I got to college, where that was when I was first confronted with that whole concept of I was slapped in the face with it was me and some buddies. I think I mentioned this on here, but it was me and some buddies. Derek Griffey, he's a guy that I've had on the podcast, actually. He was the one that we were having a conversation about, like, God and war and pacifism and all this stuff. And I had my specific thing that I was, like, sitting on my soapbox and talking about, and the group was talking about stuff, and we were just throwing ideas, and whatever it was I said, I have no idea what even stance I was taking. I mean, I kind of have an idea, but he goes, but why do you believe that? And that one question was the beginning of the unraveling of my faith. And because what I didn't have an answer for him, one, at the time. And what I later found out as I explored that question that rolled around in my head for months after that was that that's what I had always known. That's what my parents told me. That's what I had grown up knowing, like this is just what you did. This is who you are. Right. And so I was confronted with what I actually believed and what I personally, like, what am I being thoughtful, like you're saying, like knowing what you believe. And I then very quickly realized that I have been living a life full of what other people have told me and not what I actually, without conviction of what I actually believe. And so that was the first time I was like convicted of like, I need to figure out what I believe. And so I started tearing it all down as I kind of ran headfirst into this idea. And I was like, whoa, man, I don't know what that is. So get rid of it and we'll build it from the base up, And so that was my junior year. And I'm a youth ministry major. So imagine how exciting that was. Yeah. So, I graduate and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, I don't want to be a youth pastor. Like, that's not what I wanted. I never wanted to be a youth pastor to begin with. And I thought I had kind of talked myself into that. And now I very quickly realized that I was like, no, that's not what I want. But what do you do, at the time? And so when I got to Invisible Children, like you had said, this environment just allowed me to like explore. And I went to church, just started figuring things out. But at some point in time, I finally gave myself permission to not go to church. And it was the biggest weight off my shoulders I've ever had. Yeah. And I really haven't looked back. I'm not afraid to go into a church, but I just don't want that. That's just not what I want right now. And that's just not what I believe. And, there's some friends that really struggle with that I still have, that I've caught up with, and with what I believe, I guess, and, or what I don't believe more so than probably what I believe. I think we probably believe more similar things than we do different things, to be completely honest. But, there's like a hang up on what I don't believe, and I just don't like that. But that's another story for another day. So I like there's different groups, there's different people that are doing things that I'm like, man, I love that, right? And it's in the name of Jesus, it's in the name of Christianity, it's in that name. And like for a long time I had a really trouble, like I had trouble, like I said, like separating those two. And I think that that's a more of a one-sided thing, because I understand the more common Christian viewpoint is that it is kind of mutually exclusive. But I've also now, I believe that it's not, and I don't think that I don't belong in that conversation, in that circle, because I don't believe what you believe. I believe that I belong in that conversation just as much as you do. I believe in that. I belong in that arena just as much as the next person. Just because I don't believe what you believe doesn't mean that I don't belong there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to put you into, like, you don't have to say you believe me. Like, trust me, like I'm authenticity, and I'm just being who I am. Right. And I'm telling you what I believe. And you can totally not agree with me. That's totally okay. I want this to be a safe place too, So like,
well, I think that just spurs like my own thoughts. And I think something that is ingrained in a lot of, maybe it's more American or evangelical ideas, that there's this feeling of like, number one, we're going to tell you what is right and good, and B, you're going to defend it. Like,
I don't have to, because I'm right.
or just like, you should always be defending yourself from the world using your faith. As it like a defense. And I think that mindset like sets you up for a lot of pain.
And for sure.
And estrangement from the life and the world that God created.
I appreciate you saying that. I think that that's spot on. I really agree with that.
And I think there's a feeling within me that if people ask me about my faith, or if I have things to say about my faith, like, I'm comfortable saying those things.
Yeah.
But if someone wants to argue with me or ask, like, say, hey, why, like, what you believe is stupid, or
yeah,
hey, I think you're wrong, defend yourself.
I don't want to do that.
Asking, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And B, you don't want me to do that, because what you're saying really is, hey, let me prove you wrong.
Right.
And that's not an attitude of listening. It's not an attitude of conversation. And I'm going to leave there feeling little, and you're going to leave there feeling superficially big.
Yeah.
And it's not going to last for you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to like you less.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
I just don't like, I very much, like, I just don't feel like I need to defend myself. Like, if I don't, you know what I mean? Like, for me anymore. And in some ways, like, I've come to grips with that on my own. And so, like, I've just let it go. Like, it's not forefront of my mind. Like, I don't walk through my day anymore, like, thinking about, like, I wonder if, like, whatever, like, whatever that is. Like, I don't do that. And so, like, it's not, I'm like, I'm rusty. I'm out of practice. Like, I couldn't even defend myself now if I wanted to, like, to be completely honest. And I don't need to, because that's not important to me in life right now. Like, I just want to do good and make a difference and love people. And I think that Jesus is brilliant. And I just don't agree fundamentally with the Christian church. What's wrong with that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, for me, that's just like, it's cool. Like, we're good, man. Like, we don't have to disagree. We don't have to, like, argue about it. Like, you do you, I'll do me. And if someday you're right, then great. And if I'm wrong and, like, I'm right someday, then, like, great. Like, who cares? Like, But
I think part of that posture too is not necessarily an unwillingness to engage with someone. Like I said, like, I am willing to have that conversation, but I think also as a part of that stance is a vulnerability and a willingness to be wrong. Like, I am fully aware that what I am saying could be offensive to people who I love very much, who are probably more strict in their Christian faith than I am, or who have a lot of these beliefs. And
likewise,
I'm also aware that I might go back to that point someday in my life. Like, there may be a day in which I say, like, I'm going to kind of become this person that I was because I think that's important. Like, I might change my mind.
But that's okay too.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
I might continue a faith journey that looks different. And
it's a journey. Like, you just hit it, though. It's a journey. I don't think you can ever be absolute. There's no way for us to be absolute. There is no way. Either one of us.
Yeah, well, that's why it's called faith. I mean, there's not.
So it's just like you get to go and you get to figure these things out as you go. And, like, I may go right back to where I was too. I'm not so closed-minded to say that I wouldn't, or I'm not. But, like, that's just where I'm at right now. And that's not going to be my priority to waste my breath on that. I just want to live my life. And if I come back around to it, then great, And that's bottom line. That's where I stand. And I hear you. Like, man, it took me a really long time. One of the reasons that this whole thing took the time that it did to even, like, be created is because I was afraid of voicing where I stand with my faith and my religion in a lot of ways. I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of people in my family that don't agree with me, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. Like, I've finally come to the conclusion that I'm secure enough in who I am that I don't need to have that validation that, like, I'm okay from you. Like, my mom's still gonna love me, even though I've said the things I just said. Like, she is.
Yeah.
She's still going to love me. She's even told me, I still love you. Like, like, there's nothing you can do that's going to make me stop loving you. And she's still going to tell me that she's going to pray for me, and that's great. Thank you, Mom.
Yeah.
I love it. I know she's listening.
Yeah.
Like, she's still going to believe the things that she believes, and that's great. I want her to. I don't need her to be where I'm at. That's where she's at, and that's okay. That's right where she needs to be. And if she ends up where I'm at, great. If I end up where she's at, great. But like, I'm right where I need to be, and she's right where she needs to be at this point in time. But I'm not done. My story's not over. I'm going to continue to learn. I'm going to continue to go down this faith journey. I'm going to continue to figure out what that means for me, and I'm not done. So like, I'm a living, breathing thing that continues to grow and evolve and change. I'm a different person than I was 6 months ago. I'm a different person than I was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yesterday I had a hard day, and today I didn't. So like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just
Well, I think that year of searching for me was full of a lot of fear of, like, there was a part of me that said, I don't think I can call myself a Christian anymore.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe the right way. And I'm ashamed of that, so I don't think I'm a Christian anymore, and I don't think God loves me anymore.
Yeah.
And
that was like the breakdown, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it was just like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm going to hell, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
that's hard.
Well, yeah, it's like, I'm 25, and I know I'm going to hell, and I have to live the rest of my life, like, knowing that, like, that's not fun.
Yeah,
what
right?
am I to do for the next 70 years?
And a fundamental thing of who you were, or what you thought you were. Like, it was an identity crisis.
Right.
You had an identity crisis. That's what you had. Like,
yeah. And I read a book that just blew my butt off, like, with how I read so many books that year, but there was a
What's
couple
the
books
one
that really, really helped me. There was two. The first one is called God in the Dark by Oz Guinness. And he's more of a conservative thinker than I am, but his viewpoints on doubt and walking in the dark were so profound to me.
Yeah.
And he like went through all these biblical characters who were just like lost, like completely out of their minds, unsure of anything, so far removed from what any of us would call Christian, like being a Christian.
Have you ever thought about the fact that like then they didn't call it Christianity either?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Paul didn't have a life.
It was life. That was just the life they lived. And
and they were loved by God, and that book really helped me. And then there's another one. I don't know if you've heard of this author named Henry Nouwen.
Yeah, I have. Yep.
He's fantastic, but he wrote a book called Adam, God's Beloved.
Okay, I didn't read that one, but yeah.
He has a lot of great books, and I really recommend them to everyone who's
I was trying to think of which one I had read.
He read this book called he wrote a book called Life of the Beloved that I think is his most popular.
Yeah, I didn't read that one either,
but he volunteered, or he lived at a community for people with severe disabilities.
Yeah.
Called L'Arche in Canada.
Maybe I did read this book. Go on.
No,
sorry.
He's talked about this community in several of his books, but in this book he's talking about how his assignment, or as he's living there, is to care for one person, and that person's name was Adam. Excuse me. And Adam cannot speak. He cannot feed himself. He cannot eat. He cannot clothe himself. He cannot walk.
Mm-hmm.
He cannot do anything for himself. And so Henry Nouwen is taking care of this young man. He's terrified that he's going to screw up or whatever.
Yeah.
But as he's taking care of him, he is seeing Jesus in this man who is profoundly disabled. And he is seeing the love of God just pour through this man. And he just is writing so beautifully about his experience, but he also is saying, so much of our faith and our questions about who's in or who's out is based on the idea that someone can say the sinner's prayer, the quote unquote sinner's prayer, like, I'm a sinner, God, come into my life, and I put my trust in Jesus Christ, and that they can be baptized and profess their faith.
And he asked about, like, what about this guy?
And so he's looking at this man, and he's like, he can't do any of that. Yeah. It's physically impossible for him to do this. Yeah. Does that mean he's going to hell? Like, does that mean he's unloved by God? And he's just like, I cannot believe in a God who would have this weird rule that you must
say this one thing and then
say these specific words, and like that there was nothing this person could do, that there's nothing Adam could do that could make God love him less, and there's nothing Adam could do to throw off the love of God in his life, and there's nothing Adam could do to really, like, profess his faith in God. All Adam could do was just enjoy the life that God had given him and pour out his own joy and love on the people around him.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, and I'm butchering the way Henry Nouwen wrote it.
No, but I've read, he has another book. Is it The Barbarian Way, or who wrote that one? He wrote another. I read this book because he's used this analogy in something else. But yeah, I know exactly I know exactly what you're talking about, because
that book was just like, sorry.
You're good.
That book was so eye-opening to me, because I was just at a point in my life where I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I was having, like, pretty intense depression, and even some dark thoughts about harming myself. And, and just like, if God can't love me because I don't line up with these specific checklists of beliefs, or these beliefs about, like, gay people, or about, like, does God love atheists, or, like, or that my own, like, actions are what matters most, that my daily quiet time, like, that I don't know, just all these things this list of things I had to do to get God to love me for another day.
Right. And like, it's exhausting to think about those now, isn't it?
So and if I threw that out the window,
that you couldn't,
that I wasn't that thing anymore. Yeah. And reading this book gave me such a huge sigh of relief that there's nothing I can do to be abandoned by a loving God. And also, it was partly like throwing the old God away, and not in a mean way, but just being like, hey, I have to let this go, because this isn't actually God. Yeah. It's me, and letting this old self ritual fall away, and experience, like, this kind of freedom of, like, oh, this old dogmatic ritual that was actually causing me a lot of stress, like, I don't have to keep it up. I really don't. Good. And that's nice.
Absolutely.
So I was unemployed, looking for jobs. I wanted to get out of Kansas. I didn't really want to work at a church, and I got a job at a church in Kansas.
That's when we crossed paths, right?
A church. It was a church organization.
Yeah. And wasn't that when you stayed in St. Paul with me? You
Yeah.
were working
So
for them, right? Yeah.
I was doing church relations for like a missions organization.
Yeah.
And the most beautiful, like, it felt like a coming home of sorts where I grew up in the Mennonite church.
Yeah.
And so your whole conversation about pacifism kind of piqued my interest. But
Yeah.
I I came back home and I started going back to the Mennonite church and really kind of digging into like my my cultural, my familial, and my spiritual background of like what Mennonites believe,
Yeah.
and found that it felt a lot like home, and that it was a lot more loving than I remembered, and that a lot of the things that I had put on top of my faith that I've constructed, this sort of was just like, hey, you can let that go, and
Yeah.
you have a place here.
That's beautiful.
And that, yeah, and it really kind of opened my eyes to even more ancient traditions like Episcopal or Orthodox or Catholic, who have every religious organization has its own issues, but to know that people have been meeting together and thinking about these things for 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 years, like,
yeah.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
to be able to sit in a church and be like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm investigating this on my own, and I'm hearing these things, but I'm also rooted in something that has quite a bit of history.
Yeah.
And man, coming from like in college and this like non-denominational background and coming back into this kind of older, less evangelical perspective was really refreshing, and it made me really appreciate denominations for some reason. Like the idea that churches have to be accountable to one another, like that some dude can't just stand up on stage and say whatever he wants, that there's like accountability there, was like, hey, that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was just really, really nice. And it was like 2 years working there, getting to meet pastors who just lived out, like, I mean, there were some like in St. Paul, like where you were, who were just wonderful. And I would go to like cities and see where churches were growing there. But also I would go out into like Western Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And there's a pastor there who has a church of like 30 people. And he's just preaching on Sundays and visiting people in hospitals and sweeping the floor after church is over. And, you know, like, it's just like the dedication to like helping people grow spiritually, and allowing yourself to go to a place that far removed from the rest of the world is like, it's really amazing. And I was just so appreciative for, like, I just got this new appreciation for pastors and the work that they do. And that was healing in a way too.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, but from there, I wanted to continue writing. I had been doing a little freelance stuff. This is going back to your very first question an hour ago.
No, it's totally fun. I honestly, I had no idea. I talked about this in the beginning before we even started recording. Like, I don't know where the conversation's gonna go, and I love that. It's cool. Like, this is a These are real conversations. You know, this is a real conversation that you couldn't mimic this. You couldn't design this conversation to go the way it's gone. And I love that. I think it's beautiful. So I love it. Yeah. Keep going.
Thanks. I wanted to keep doing writing or stuff in the creative capacity, but didn't really know where to go next. And so I just kind of kept talking with friends and former Invisible Children friends and stuff like that. And Brian Funk, told me that he was working at a nonprofit called To Write Love on Her Arms in Florida, and that he was leaving his position, but there was a social media job open, so I applied, and he recommended me for it, and
bada bing, bada boom.
Interviewed and got it.
That's so cool.
So I moved to Florida by myself. I lived there for a little less than a year. I was running social media.
Where is the headquarters of To Write Love on Her Arms?
It's in Melbourne, Florida, which is kind of near Cape Canaveral on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Kind of halfway down.
Because I live in Florida now. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, yeah. Surprise.
Where in Florida are you?
Coconut Creek, Florida. So just north of Fort Lauderdale, like Deerfield Beach, Delray, like south of Delray, west of Deerfield. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I like when you talk about vulnerability, like to write a tweet or a Facebook post and then know that like 1 million people are going to see it. It's like, oh boy, I better not mess this up.
Yeah.
That it kind of taught me like just how to, when you're guiding a brand or when you're guiding something like a movement, you have to be very careful about your words, and especially with a mental health organization, like
absolutely
looking for triggers or looking for things that could set someone off, or even when people respond to things online and they're like, hey, I'm going to hurt myself tonight. Like, what can you do to help me? Or, hey, I want to end my life. Like, what can you do to help me? It's like, oh my gosh, like
that's heavy.
Here we go. Like, I guess we
Yeah.
have to have these responses ready for these people.
Yeah.
And to really meet them with compassion and not like, hey, get off our feet. Like, we can't say that, and we don't want to say that. And
yeah. No, because that's exactly like that's the people that you're trying to reach at To Write Love on Her Arms, and
but
like
also like we're not a mental health care provider.
No.
So
yeah.
But we can point people in the right direction and help them get the help that they need. But we can't do it for them. That's something else that
I was gonna say, doesn't that play right into the faith conversation that we just had?
Yeah, well, this guy Walt, this man Walt was saying like, as I was walking through this depression and anxiety and questioning, he said something I'll never forget. He said, "You alone must do this, but you don't have to do it alone." And that really like resonated to my core. Like he's like, all the decisions and all the things that you come to believe or the actions that you take, like you're the only one who can do those things. But to live this life and to pursue the things you love and to ask these questions, like you don't have to do that alone.
Yeah.
And that's really nice to know.
Yeah. I love that. I wrote that down. Sorry, I was distracted because I was writing that down. You alone must do this, but you don't have to do it alone. That's powerful. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, so I I worked there for a little under a year and really enjoyed the people I worked with. I was living by myself for the first time. So
how was that?
It was good and it was really hard.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm an introvert, so like there were weekends where I had a Publix right behind my apartment. So I could come home on Friday, go get groceries Friday night, and not leave my apartment until Monday morning. Like it was like it just
I get it. I
mean, very easy to do that. So
I do that now, and I'm an extrovert. Like I'm working on this full time, but like I don't need to leave my house to work on this, Yeah. So like sometimes, thank goodness I have a dog because he requires me to like get out of the house, but it's still not the same to leave the apartment complex, really. And but yeah, man, that can be hard. Like my wife comes home and sometimes I'm like, she works, she's social, she's like has meetings. She's talking to people every day. And so it's just very different sometimes. Our needs are really like different because she comes home and it's like, let me tell you about my day. And I'm like, I need, like today I actually had a really hard time her coming home. Like I felt really overwhelmed with her telling me about work. And where I was like, I've been in my head and I did a podcast earlier today actually, but like I've been in my head. I haven't really talked to anybody all day. And like my head's been going nonstop. Like I need eased back into conversation, like honey, like please like hang on for a second. Like I'm like really overwhelmed. But yeah, living alone is, necessary and hard, and it's just a time of life that you get to learn a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So when I heard about the job in DC at International Justice Mission, I knew it was a Christian organization and that it was in a big city in DC.
Yeah.
And so like I just asked myself, like, do I really feel like I can work at a Christian organization? Like, do I line up with the beliefs?
Yeah.
And I had a time of soul searching, and I was like, hey, I actually do believe this.
Yeah.
And I believe it enough to commit to working at an organization like this.
Yeah. That's cool.
And I was just very ready to be in a different place and to go to DC. I'd visited it a while.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoyed it. So I moved up here in March of 2016, and moved in with a guy named Saul, who also worked at Invisible Children.
Yeah.
And we lived together, and I was finally a copywriter at a major nonprofit.
Look at you, like, achieving goals.
Achieved a goal that I had for, a long time.
That's awesome, man.
And it was like, oh my gosh, all the things I've been through to get to this one place, and to really, feel proud of myself. And
you should be
excited for this, opportunity.
Yeah.
And also, like, I felt like it opened me up to like other things that I'd been putting off. Like, I'd never really dated anyone before.
Yeah.
And so coming to DC, I was like, hey, big city, might as well give it a try. I was on dating apps for like a month, and I was like, this is stupid. I don't like this at all.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm either going to meet someone at church or at work or through friends.
Yeah.
And a couple months after moving to DC, started hanging out with a girl from work and asked her out on a date like 2 months after moving to DC. And we dated for a year and a half and got engaged for another 6 months. And now we're married.
Congratulations, my friend.
Yeah.
And I got to meet her. It's so cool to got to meet her. And like, she's a rad woman. She's awesome.
Oh, she's so fantastic.
Yeah. I'm really happy for you.
She got her MBA from Georgetown, and I was like, oh, I married like a really successful, smart woman too. Like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, I'm sure a lot of men feel this way, but like, to come home to someone who's better than you and loves you is like, wow, what a gift.
Yeah, my wife gets to come home to me, and she's better than me. And like
you strive to be better and like to love this person and sort of like, just encourage them to grow and do their own thing and be the powerful woman she was created to be. Like, it's really cool. And she's not around. She's in Texas this week for a training, and I like miss her, and I feel lonely now.
And it's kind of a cool feeling, but it also sucks.
I'm going down there for a wedding this week, and we're going to meet up tomorrow. And I'm just like, excited to see her, and I never really felt that way before.
Oh, that's so cool.
Meeting her, and so man. So life is good. It's complicated, and everyone, I think everyone in their life will get to to points where they have to make pretty life-changing decisions about like what they believe about themselves.
Yeah.
And for me, man, like the faith conversation, like what do I believe about myself? I think that was even the bigger question. It's not really what do I believe about God. It's like,
yeah,
what do I
absolutely.
believe about myself? Am I worthy of love from God? And do I really believe that I deserve good things? And then with meeting my wife, it was like, do I think I'm worthy of love from someone else? Like, do I really think that that I'm lovable?
Yeah.
And do I actually think I have the capacity to offer someone something close to something like fulfilling love? Like, do I have that in me to offer that?
Yeah.
And once you say yes to that, or once you like, you realize that about yourself, that you do have it in you, it's like doors start opening, and you realize that there are deep waters within you that you can offer to someone else, even when you don't feel it. You know?
I've been saying, it's just a theme that's kind of came up, and I think it speaks to exactly what you said. And you said it differently, but it's life on purpose. When you're living your life on purpose, and it doesn't mean that you know what that purpose is, but it's part of it is being worthy of love and loving someone else, and all of that. That's a fundamental question, I think, that goes along with that. And just when you start being true to who you are and figuring that out and living that life on purpose, I think, man, boy, does the world open up.
Yeah, for sure. That's
beautiful. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. And I know that, this is a theme too, but like, we're not like the closest friends, but like, I respect you so much. And to bring it full circle, like perspective is crazy, because, you started this story off and I'm like, but dude, like I respect you so much. Like I look at you and like, you're a peer. I respect you. I respect what you're doing. I respect who you are. You belong in this conversation. You belong in whatever world you want to, be in. And so I say all that because like my perspective of you is that you're a kick-ass dude, and I think you're killing it. I think you're doing a great job. And, even though I wouldn't, we're not the closest of friends, like you're my friend and I love you. I think that you're a beautiful man, and
thank you.
I know that's weird to say, but it's true. Like, you're beautiful, and your soul is so beautiful. Like, your story is raw and pure, and it's awesome. And I hope that people listening can hear that and feel that too, because I hear it and I feel it. And, I love exactly what you said. I love everything you said. And, we don't subscribe to the same things, but at the same time, we subscribe to the exact same thing in so many ways.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. I find more things that like are similar in your story and what you believe and that are to mine than are different. And I love that. And regardless, I think that, again, you're living your life on purpose and you are worthy of love, and that's beautiful. So
thanks, man. Well, I sure hope so.
Yeah.
And I think there was a moment when I was in Florida, or when I was in Kansas, where I was, I had all these dreams of doing other things somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I just reached a point where I was like, no one else is going to do those things for me.
Yeah.
I have to just try and do them and move. Oof. I have to get out, or I have to go somewhere, or I have to, move my feet or move my brain.
Yeah.
And,
but nobody else is going to do it for you.
Right. And that's super a vulnerable thing. Like, it sounds so obvious.
Yeah, it does, but it isn't. And everybody that's listening, that's at our age range, I think, especially, has realized that. I was talking to my mom the other day, and I was like, man, I was talking about this gal that it's a family member, and I was like, I've finally figured out that none of us, everybody's just figuring it out. Nobody's got it figured out. Nobody knows what the hell we're doing. Like, I wake up in the day and like, yeah, we go to work or we do our job or we do the things that we like love and care about and are trying to accomplish. But at the end of the day, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, you know, like I'm figuring it out. And like, when you realize that everybody around you, successful, unsuccessful, whatever that definition is for you, the people you respect and love, like, man, they don't have it all figured out. And and if you think they do, you're completely wrong, and you need to change your perspective, because like, we're all in this together. And I don't know, you know, like you said before, you alone must do this, you know, what Walt had said, but you don't have to do it alone. And just knowing that, like, hey, like, we're all just figuring this out, and you got to do it, but you don't have to do it alone. And I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's cool too.
Well, I'm going to wrap things up here. Do you want to leave us with anything? I want you to plug your new thing that you got going. I don't know what you're calling it. Your email deal.
Yeah. I have a newsletter.
There we go.
It's like a monthly newsletter. I send it out like the first week of the month. And it's basically...
It's so cool.
Thanks, man. I don't know if you felt this way growing up, but the internet used to be fun. Like, I remember, like, with dial-up and everything.
Yeah.
Like just being a kid and like really enjoying the internet, and like
you only got so much time, and you had to like get on and like do it and like print something off and like have that thing. Yeah. Right.
Then you have like Napster and like Kazaa, and you're like downloading your favorite songs.
Yeah, totally.
Super illegally, but I still enjoy exploring and like finding interesting and fun and beautiful things online.
Yeah.
And like, it's fun for me to uncover that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically every month I put together an alphabetical list of just 26 things on the internet that are fun, interesting, and beautiful.
Where did you come up with that number, 26?
I wanted it just to be an alphabetical list. So A to Z.
Okay.
So
A to Z. Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Alphabet.
That makes sense.
So I just like, I wonder if people would be interested in reading this, and if people like, I think some people like when other people do the work for them of finding interesting stuff, and I'm one of those people. And so I just put it together. I sent out like a test to some friends, and they were like, hey, maybe consider, providing a little description of everything or whatever. And so I sent out my first official newsletter in September. And there's like 50 people who read it or who subscribe to it, and I've gotten really good feedback.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Next week I'll be sending out another one, or the beginning of October I'll be sending out another one, and beginning of November. And so
how can people subscribe?
Yeah, so it's called it uses a service called Substack. The newsletter is called The A to Z. The word the, letter A, the word to, T-O-Z, .substack.com, S-U-B-S-T-A-C-K. So the A to Z .substack.com.
Cool. And I'll put that in all my stuff too, if that's nice. Okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah, for sure. And so that website, you can subscribe there, and then you can read the old posts on that website.
Oh, cool.
Too.
That's
so
awesome.
It's kind of like a blog.
Nice.
Sort of thing. Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's kind of like, I like being creative. I like doing things, and I'm writing all day long at work.
Yeah.
So what's like the fun thing I can do in my spare time that is still creative and a little bit vulnerable, but it's just kind of like, hey, why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
I know I've done the same thing. Like I created an Instagram classic, right? The classic